So it looks like Congressman Justin Amash has called in. And let's go to Congressman Amash. Thanks, Congressman. I understand from speaking with your communications person, you are busy this morning. I do appreciate you calling in and addressing this issue, your no vote.
Thanks, Renk. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. We'll see if you want to say thanks when we're done. I will just say from the get-go, I'm disappointed in this vote, and we were just talking about it. I wrote a piece out there, and I explained to Congressman Amash how there was a vote that it was a resolution, a non-binding resolution expressing support for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials and rejecting calls to abolish the agency to be voted on. Abolish the agency. 244 to 35, it passed. 133 Democrats voted president. 30 of the 35 who voted against the resolution expressing support, 34 were Democrats, 1 Republican. That was you. I also explained how you tweeted out the House voted today on an inane, which I explained meant silly and stupid, resolution regarding ICE. The resolution makes several dubious claims and denounces calls to abolish ICE. I wouldn't abolish ICE without an alternative, but there's no reason to treat a federal agency as though it's beyond reproach and reform. So I asked the question, and I'm asking it of you, how is a vote to support ICE inane? And how is a vote to support ICE stating that the agency is beyond reproach and reform?
Well, when you read the resolution, which I hope you had a chance to read it, it makes several dubious claims. So we can't just read a resolution, have it make dubious factual claims, suggest that without ICE, the whole country would fall apart, which is ridiculous. The agency's only existed since 2003. And then say, well, I'm going to give my stamp of approval to this resolution. Could you imagine if we had a resolution that said the TSA is the greatest agency on earth, and it's so great, and here are all the great things about it. And then I vote no on it, and someone says, oh, well, so you're against airport security.
Well, I think...
Well, of course not. That's not...
Well, no, I understand...
That's not how it works.
I understand where you're coming from, Congressman Amash, but the problem is it didn't say it's the greatest. It just said showing support.
If you read the resolution, it makes a lot of stunning claims about ICE as though ICE is perfect. And there are a lot of problems with ICE. There are Fourth Amendment problems with ICE, with the way it handles warrantless searches and other things. So there are lots of things that conservatives should be concerned about. And in fact, it wasn't even that long ago. It was just a few years ago when conservatives were calling for abolishing the whole Department of Homeland Security. This is not a conservative department. This is a department that was put together with Democratic support in the Senate. The Senate was controlled by Democrats at the time. And a lot of conservatives voted against it at the time, against its creation. And for many years, a lot of conservatives talked about abolishing the Department of Homeland Security, just like we want to abolish a whole bunch of other departments and agencies. So I think it's very dangerous to get members of Congress on the record saying that some kind of department or agency, which we know has lots of problems, in addition to the good it does, has lots of problems, and that we're going to treat it like it's this beacon that
I got to go to break. Hold on, Congressman Amash. Sorry about that. Congressman Amash, I appreciate him calling in. He was very busy. Get one more segment with him. He's calling in from the Capitol in Washington, D.C. I asked him to call in to address his no vote yesterday and expressing support for ICE and rejecting calls to abolish it. And as we were talking about, had a hard break. I had to cut him off in the middle of what he was saying. We'll come right back to him. That he believes that it was a silly and stupid resolution. He used the word inane, and that's the definition of it. And there were dubious claims that was made in it. So if you'd like to finish your point, Congressman Amash, I apologize for cutting you off, but it's hard breaks are hard breaks. I forgot exactly the point you were on, but I think it had something to do with not supporting something because it has flaws. Oh, wait, maybe I have to push this button. Now you're on,
Let's
Congressman.
break,
Sorry.
but-
Hey, sorry, Congressman Amash. Sorry, I had the wrong button on. Go ahead if you wanted to finish your point with what you were saying.
Okay, so I don't remember how I was finishing before we cut off at the break there. But what I would say is there was a resolution there was a bill before that was going to be put on the floor by the Democrats to abolish ICE. I would have voted no on that. So I'm not calling for abolishing ICE. And we shouldn't try to conflate the two as though if you don't support this resolution, you must be for abolishing ICE. What I'm saying is it is silly to put a resolution on the floor that says ICE is great, here are 30 great things about ICE, not talk about any of the problems with ICE, and talk as though ICE is irreplaceable and not reformable. Like you just can't reform anything in it. It's perfect. We should accept it as it is and move on. And anyone who doesn't is not patriotic. It reminds me a lot, frankly, of like the debates over the Patriot Act and other things, where if you were against it, you're just not a patriot. And I think this is a terrible way to legislate. It's all about messaging. It's designed to go after the Democrats. Fine, I understand why they want to criticize the Democrats on this stuff, but it's not actual legislating in any way. It's sort of silly messaging, and I think it is harmful in the long run because it leads to this sort of groupthink on the Republican side where we're not allowed to question federal agencies that have big problems and things that conservatives should be really, really concerned about.
Well, Congressman Amash,
license plate readers, warrantless searches, there are a lot of things that we should be concerned about here with respect to ICE that should be reformed or changed. And frankly, if another agency were doing a lot of the internal enforcement work, that would be fine too. This agency's only existed since 2003.
No, well, Congressman Amash, I think, where you're saying they're boasting or booming or making these claims about how great it is, the same could be true about you saying how it has a lot of problems. But that's really not the issue.
Well,
and I don't know. I don't know. Well, hold on. I don't know. I'm certainly not positioning that you want it abolished. I read your tweet, and I believe you in that. I'm not positioning it that way, and I don't want anybody else to position it in that way. But I always like to give analogies to bring it down to the personal level. Showing support for an agency that's been under attack, brutal attack from the left, is not wanting to vote on a show of support of them due to the fact that they have flaws. Let me ask you this, and something I brought up earlier. Would you not support your wife? Because we're all flawed. We all have flaws. So,
right,
if we want to be analogy, and I know it's a stretch, but it's like saying, I'm not supporting my wife because she's not perfect.
With all due respect, that's totally different. I'm dealing with a resolution, and I have to decide whether I agree with the language of this resolution or don't agree with the language of the resolution. I'm a representative in Congress, and I represent everyone in my district. And when I go through this and I see language that I think is hyperbolic, exaggerated, not correct, or statements like, we denounce calls for the abolishment of ICE, there might be some legitimate reason someone calls for abolishing ICE. In fact, as I said before, Republicans were strong supporters of eliminating the Department of Homeland Security not that long ago, as well as a bunch of other departments. So this is not something that is contrary to conservative principles. In fact, it's stunning to me that conservatives aren't more upset about this. Conservatives at home, they should be. Certainly my conservative colleagues were upset about this thing. They tell me on the House floor, Justin, I agree with you. This has lots of problems. I don't like it. But they're afraid. They're afraid to vote no precisely because of what we're engaged in right now, right? You get someone on the radio says you're doing a bad job because you didn't vote for this thing, and then they have to go and explain it. Well, so they'd rather just vote yes because it's easy, not because they agree with it.
Congressman Amash, I said earlier that is this a political stunt? Yes. To some extent, it certainly is. Just like the bill introduced by the 3 Democrat congressmen and women concerning abolishing ICE, when they want to put it up, they said, I don't want to vote for my own bill. It's a political stunt.
As I said, I would have voted no on that.
And I understand that. But what people hear And what this is really there's been an onslaught of attack against ICE. Is ICE perfect? No, nothing in Washington perfect. It's probably the most imperfect thing out there when it comes to politics is Washington D.C. And you and I have always agreed upon that, and I agree with you upon this. On that point. My point being is that by not you and your other colleagues who you say were afraid to go out there and vote against supporting ICE what do you think the message is to your constituents and the rest of America? Because they're not going to read this bill. They're not going to, not the bill, the resolution. And, just as you're saying there's dubious claims, people could be saying that you're saying there's dubious claims.
Well, they're welcome to bring up the particular claims. They're welcome to say that there's no Fourth Amendment issues with ICE, everything's fine. There are no warrantless searches, etc. They're welcome to make those claims.
That was in the resolution. That was not in the resolution about Fourth Amendment.
Let me give you an example, Renk. I think this is just partisanship, what you're trying to advocate here, and I think that's wrong. If we had a resolution, for example, right now saying the FBI is so great, FBI is wonderful, here's 20 bullet points about how the FBI is the most important thing ever, and anyone who criticizes the FBI is not patriotic. That's what the language implies. Do you think that would be right?
I'd have to
say that would be legit. Should I just say blindly, yeah, I'm going to vote yes on that because, it doesn't mention the bad things about the FBI, but, it does do good things, and it's a message, and we got to support the FBI.
Well, that
would be ridiculous.
But what you just said, Congressman Amash, that means you would have to vote support for nothing in Washington because nothing in Washington. What in Washington is perfect? What in Washington has no flaws?
Renk, you have to weigh the hyperbolic statements, so the hyperbolic statements of support, with the lack of criticism. So you have to weigh the whole thing. Anytime you look at a resolution or a bill, you have to weigh the whole thing and weigh the pros and cons. For me, there are way too many hyperbolic statements about how the country will essentially be in big trouble without ICE, which is just not true. You could have another agency handling these functions. There are all sorts of ways in which this could be handled. And then there is no criticism of ICE. So you have a resolution that is completely one-sided. It's hyperbolic in the pros, and it has no cons. That's very different than if you give me a resolution that would be mostly talking positively about ICE and maybe mention a few things that ICE could work on. That'd be great. I'd vote yes on that resolution.
Okay. Well,
and that's my job. My job is to represent the people.
Right. And the people's sentiment. And you think the people's sentiment lies on with you on this one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think overall, yes. I have to represent my whole district.
Right. I understand.
And I think the bottom line is you're elected to be a representative of all the people. And it's not a direct democracy. You're right. People at home aren't reading these resolutions. They're relying on me to read it, and they want me to represent them after reviewing the resolution.
Hold on, Congressman Amash. I'm up against another hard break. I do appreciate coming on and having this spirited debate with us.